Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Hi everyone, welcome to School's Law with Salamatu, and as usual, I bring you topics in law to help in your studies, and also for those of you who may be interested in law in the future, my videos will serve as some sort of an introduction into what you should expect as a law student in terms of academics. And also tips you can rely on to help you in your studies when you eventually become a law student. In my second year reading law, I had a 4.0 out of 4.0 in my first semester. And honestly, I was really shocked because I don't think there was any point I was targeting a 4.0. I know that I've always been somebody who is a high achiever, so I don't target not to do well. I always target doing well. But I don't think I ever targeted a 4.0. So even me myself, I shocked at the results. But then when I look back, I feel there were things that I did that actually really, really helped me. When I finished my first semester exams, I was very confident I was going to do well because the exam went well. So in this video, I'm going to share with you tips that I think helped me in achieving a 4.0 in my first year reading law. The first tip is to be studious. See, there is no course in your SHS. So if you are somebody who is doing the post-WASI, which is my case, I did LLB post-WASI. So I didn't have a first degree before going into law. So if you are a post-WASI student like myself, the first thing you have to understand is that law is not social studies. It is not government. It is not history. There is nothing like law in the senior high school curriculum. Okay. So you don't already know anything about law before you come and start it. Again, if you're like me, who didn't exactly have any interaction with law from my background or any mentorship in law, if you went to the law green like myself, then your case is even worse because you don't have any orientation of what to even expect. Okay. But even if you are that kind of person, like I said, you haven't done anything like law before. So the first thing you have to do is to be studious. And by that, I mean that go to class, listen to what the lecturer is saying, take your notes. When you get back home, if the lecturer gives you slides, read the slides, add back some of the things that you missed from class. Because, of course, if you're taking notes in class, you won't necessarily capture everything. So add back the things that you didn't capture from the slides to your notes and ensure that you are committed to understanding what has been taught. Advantage of that is that by the time you get to the exam, you have comprehensive notes. And the good thing about being committed to gathering notes and being committed to understanding what has been taught is that before you even get to the exam, you would have understood what has been taught. Trust me, if you are committed to understanding what has been taught, you would understand because you'll be looking for ways and means to try and understand. You'd ask lecturers questions, you'd ask your friends, you'd go for group studies, and you'd be curious. And that's extremely important because, like I said, you don't know the thing before coming to the university. You see, that's your first time interacting with the thing. So if you are not committed to trying to find what the thing is about, how do you understand it? And if you don't understand, you can't write. So the first tip is to be studious. And by that, I mean go to class, take your lecture notes seriously, read your slides long before exam. I'm not saying last minute things. Read your slide, make notes out of it, and ensure that before the exam starts, you have comprehensive notes. That process alone would help you to understand even before the exam is due. The second tip is to be consistent. Don't learn as and when. Don't wait until it's exam time before you start learning. Don't wait until it's mid-semester or quiz time before you start learning. Be consistent in your studies right from the beginning of the semester, right from the time you go for your first lecture in the semester. Start to condition yourself to be studying throughout the semester. Okay. The reason why the lecturer doesn't wait till it's 2 weeks before exams for him to come and teach everything is because there is a need for you to take the things in bits and in pieces. And for you to be able to take them in bits and pieces and understand them well, you have to take it one day at a time. So you have to learn every day consistently. Don't learn on Monday and then leave it and come and continue on Friday. If you are not consistent, you forget. The whole point of studying is repetition. Or for you to be able to understand what you are studying, you have to repeat it. Again, you were not born with the knowledge of the law in your head. It's not something that you already know. So you have to do it consistently. You have to learn and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat so that you reinforce it and so that you can remember. So you have to be consistent. Another benefit of consistency is that you will be able to finish the workload before the exam is. See, at this point, I think you already know. And if you are yet to be a law student, you and Kaza, when you get to law school, you understand the workload in law school is a lot. To every principle of law, there are case law or there are cases that support it. Then beyond that, the case law, there are texts, okay, that you have to read to be able to understand the principle very well and the issues surrounding that principle. So if you have one principle of law and you have 4 cases, and then there is maybe a 15-page material you should read that the lecturer has referred you to. Each case could be at least 8 pages long. So 8 times for the 4 cases, that's 32 pages. 32 pages plus the 15-page material you should read. That is about 39 or so. My math is not good. So the point is that you would have, for that one principle, you have about a 40-page document as a whole that you should read. And that is not the only principle you'll be dealing with, even in one topic. Even in one topic, you can have like 4 or 5 principles at the least. So 40 times 4 or 5 principles. I'm just trying to illustrate how plenty the workload can be in law school, and especially if you are starting out at LLB level, it can seem like a lot. And so consistency helps you to reduce the workload into bits and pieces and take them one after the other. If you are not consistent, I swear, when exams comes, the way your body will barb you. The third tip is to internalize what you read. See, in law school, rarely will a lecturer ever ask you what is a contract. Nobody is coming to ask you list 4 elements of a contract. It's most of the questions you are going to answer in an exam requires analytical thinking. It requires you to be able to apply the principles that you have learned to real life situations. To be able to do that and do it well, you must also have understood the principles from a real life situation point of view. And the way to be able to do that is to internalize what you learn. So if you take a topic, ask yourself, what is this topic about? For example, one of the things you talk about in contract law, one of the very first things you do in contract law is to understand what the elements of contract are. So if you start talking about offer, acceptance, intention to create legal relations, consideration, you are discussing the elements of a contract. All these things have to be present for a contract to be able to be formed or for a contract to be enforceable at. So when you start discussing, for example, consideration, you learn consideration from that point of view as an element of contract, as something that needs to be present for a contract to be formed. All the cases that you read it in light of the concept that consideration is an element of contract. Don't try to chew what consideration is, and because the lecturer has given some 3 or 4 cases on consideration, you just chew what consideration is and then you memorize the cases that are behind it. You'll probably be able to give a good lecture on consideration. But then in an exam situation, when you are giving problem questions, you see that you start to struggle. So in an attempt to internalize what you read, make a very deliberate attempt to understand what you read rather than trying to memorize it. Okay, so I've read consideration. What is consideration? What are the cases on consideration? This case is this. You'll be able to rattle it. But when you are in an exam, you see that you start to struggle. So internalize what you learn. Look at the entire topic from a very realistic point of view and look at the cases like real life cases that give you that realistic feel. So when you're reading the cases, don't just read it like something you have to read to be able to spit it out in an exam. No, read it as those case studies that help you to understand what the topic is from a more realistic point of view. I don't know if you understand. The fourth thing to do is to develop a strategy and stick to it. See, before I went to law faculty to go and start doing law, I already knew that I was the kind of person that learns at night. I can spend my entire night learning and I will not be tired because I enjoy it that way. It is quieter, everybody's asleep, and sometimes the only sound you'll be hearing is the sound of the fan when it is swinging and going around. And I loved it. I love the fact that over time that sound just recedes into the background and forms part of the oh god, I just love that entire atmosphere. Okay. So that I used to learn at night because it works for me. I don't remember the number of times I've gone to the library to go and learn. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that when you are learning, people will just be moving up and down. I also don't like the fact that when I go to the library, like going to the library required me to dress properly. Okay. But when you're in a room and you're studying, you can dress anyhow. You can dress in more comfortable clothes. And I just loved that atmosphere for my studying. Okay. That is me. Don't go and follow people who learn at night because you want to create the impression that you are learning hard. You'll be wasting your time. See, you'll be joining them. They'll get all the benefits because that's one is what works for them. That's one is what works for them. And then you realize that you is not working for you. And even though you spend so much time in the night studying, you don't really see it all. Okay. So develop a strategy that works for you. And I mean that in terms of what time you should study, how you should study. Another thing, I study by writing. So I have to write out everything. So when I was in school, I had books, so many exercise books. I would have my notes, but then in addition to those notes, those notebooks, I would have so many exercise books that I write and write and write and write and write and write. So that worked for me. So after I've studied, I close the book and then I try to recollect what I have written. But then for some other people, they have to do some sort of active recall by actually speaking it, by saying, so you find them walking around and then saying what they have studied. That is them. So, in terms of what you study, how you study, what time you study, what approach you use in trying to remember what you've learned, just do you. This is not your first time being a student. You've been a student since crèche. You've gone to KG class 1, class 2, you've gone through primary school, JHS, and even senior high school. So at this time, you already know what works for you. It is not at the university that you go and be following people's strategy that they are using because they are on this list or because they are best students or whatever. They are best students because they've mastered what works for them. So if you also want to be a best student, work on what works for you and focus on it. Don't go and be following them. That is not to say that you shouldn't take a cue from other people. You can learn something from other people. You can look at things that people do and then you try it and see if it works for you. But then the point is that if it's not working for you, don't do it. If you have a strategy that has proven to work for you, focus on it and perfect it rather. Tip number 5, rest to rest, 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 rest. Why? 24 hours. You want to use all the 24 hours to study. Okay. I'm not exactly the right person to be giving that kind of advice because anybody who knew me or anybody who knows me knows that I do a lot of learning when I'm in school. But also that's because for me, repetition is extremely important. So sometimes people may think that as for this girl, she's always studying. But sometimes I'm not actively studying. I may be studying, but I'm doing it in a more relaxed manner. Okay. But then the point is that rest. I rest. The easiest form of rest for me is sleep. So I can sleep. I can decide on a certain day that I'm not learning, I'm not doing anything, I'll just sleep. Okay. Another thing is that when I'm tired, I'll sleep. If I realize that I'm studying and it's not going, I'll sleep. Okay. So find what you do that helps you to feel rested. Okay. That's not to say you should compromise on sleep. No, don't compromise on sleep. Sleep is very important. Okay. So when your body feels tired, rest, sleep, and do whatever. But then find other things that you also do that helps you to feel relaxed. Okay. So the aim is to rejuvenate your brain. That is the most important resource when you are studying your brain. If you are going to read cases and your brain is not well rested, you are going to find it difficult understanding what you are reading. So you realize that you spent a lot of time reading, but then you left and you don't even remember what you read. Chances are that your brain feels exhausted. So rest, sleep, eat healthy. Don't be learning on an empty stomach. The brain needs the energy to be able to function, just like any part of your body. So if you are on an empty stomach, how do you expect the brain to be able to work well and understand what you are reading? So eat well, rest well, and do any other thing that helps you to feel rested. When you are tired, rest. Okay? When you are tired, rest. Tip number 6 is to sharpen your writing skills. I can't overemphasize this enough. Law school is all about writing. You know the law, but can you argue with it? And we don't do oral exams in law. I mean, I don't even know any program in the university where you do oral exams. So our exams are you are required to write it. Now, it's all about arguing. You know the law, but can you argue with the law? So if you are going to write an exams, because it's going to be written, you should be able to argue with the law in writing. For you to be able to do that, your writing skills have to be very sharp. Now, I'm not saying you should go and learn how to write like Francois JSC of blessed memory, no. Or some other justice of the Supreme Court, no. But then you must learn how to communicate your points in a way that the reader would understand. If you write an essay and the lecturer doesn't understand you, you lose marks. Sometimes the lecturer knows you know from the discussion you are having, but he doesn't get where you are going. So all of those things, it takes marks off your writing. I'm not a perfect writer. And the exam pressure, a lot of things can go wrong. But I'm saying that consciously make the effort to become a better writer as a law student, because you are going to argue, okay? And because you are going to be arguing on paper, there is a need for you to be able to communicate and communicate well so that the lecturer knows that not only do you know the law, but you can argue with the law, okay? So focus on sharpening your writing skills, tenses, your subject-verb agreements, comprehension, flow, clarity, consistency. All of these things are important to ensure that your essay is good and that the lecturer or whoever it is that is marking can actually get your essay. So these 6 tips are things that I genuinely believe helped me hit a 4.0 in my first semester doing law. Of course, in retrospection, because as I said in the beginning of the video, I don't think I decided that, okay, I'm going to do A, B, and C because it will help me to get a 4.0. But when I look back, I think that these things helped extremely. This is where we end today's video. I hope that these tips help you in your studies. I'll come your way again another time with something interesting about law. Bye.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.